Hi, Polly. Good to see you. Welcome to Better with Age.
Thanks for having me.
How about starting with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Boy, that's hard. That's always so hard. A biography, a bio. The most important thing in my life is my six married children and 15 grandchildren. And they are launched and doing really well. They're all healthy and they're strong and they're all athletes in one way or another. One was a professional cyclist. And they're busy in their own worlds, so we don't have to babysit too much, but we do occasionally. And yeah, that's kind of the main foundation of my life. But over the time that I was raising them, being active and taking care of a big garden and throwing my body around, doing things that were just fun, ended up leading to me becoming a coach later in life. It's pretty general, but yeah,
Okay, and you're in New Jersey right now, yeah?
I am on the Jersey Shore,
Okay.
Asbury Park specifically.
Yeah, yeah. So before we talk about you helping other people, let's just talk about your own fitness and exercise. So I think you got into, or you're really committed to exercise later in life. Is that right?
I think of life really as a journey. We're evolving all the time. And I was never an athlete ever. And I've heard some of your other interviewees say the same thing. Barbara Hogan, I think, said that. And so I wasn't. I read a lot of books. I babysat. I cooked while I was raising my kids. I had a 3-acre garden that was on a garden tour. But during the time that I was doing that, I was also a runner because it was like a little vacation on my feet. I just took off, when I grabbed a babysitter, I could go or I'd leave really early in the morning before the kids started school. And running was just a release. On the weekends, if I could go 10 miles, it was just a vacation. I just go this big 10-mile loop and come back and start my day. And I thought I would run forever. And I also rode a bike and dragged a trailer around with kids in the back and took them to school on the bike. I went shopping on the bike. It never dawned on me that that was exercise. It never did. And when I was pregnant, I loved just going up and down the stairs a million times because it made my muscles feel like I was using them. But I never considered myself an athlete ever. Actually, a funny story was people thought I was an athlete because they saw me running all the time, even pregnant. And so I got given a softball for a parent child softball game because they thought I'd be able to pitch. I am the world's worst field sport person. I'm good at going straight lines, bicycling, running, rowing, and pitching is hard. So they kept yelling at me. It's like bowling. And these guys are yelling, it's bowling. And I'm like, what? I'm a terrible bowler too. So I started rolling it on the ground and then they're yelling up higher, up higher. And I hit the kid in the head with the ball. He had that helmet on with the ear thing and he went down and all the parents went running over to him. And I'm standing there thinking, what did you give me the ball for? And then I was up at bat and I hit the ball really well because I was strong. I didn't even know I was strong. When I stood there going, whoa, look at that. Everyone's screaming, run. So I dropped the bat and my upper body started to run. And I was a runner, but my upper body started to go faster than my lower body. And I hit the ground, that yellow baseball dirt, everywhere. It was my birthday also. So it was like a really bad birthday, really embarrassing. So that was my non-athletic athleticism. But then I got divorced after 26 years and running kind of took a back seat to a lot of other things that were going on and house and stuff like that. And I was always a bike rider. And at that time, my 15-year-old son at the time was a junior on a development team that he just happened to join. My older son was racing his bike in New York City in the park with a team, and the two of them are 10 years apart. So they were training together a lot. And then I joined this group of riders who were associated with his team. And they kept saying, join the team, join the team. I had this crappy bike that I had a baby seat rack in the back and a mushroom helmet with a baseball cap sticking out, and a coffee mug holder and mirrors on my helmet and on my handlebars, like ridiculous flat pedals. So I said, oh, okay, sure, I'll show up for a team ride. And that's how I showed up. And everybody else, most didn't have cages. They were clipped in, they were kitted out. They were like really hot looking guys and one woman. And there I am on this heavy bike doing hill repeats in our general area here. We have an area that's the highest point on the Jersey Shore on the East Coast. So up and down and up and down, and I'm chugging along, and these people are going up and down next to me several times as I'm still going up, going, you got this, you got this, you got a heavy bike, you need a better bike, you need to clip in some. Thinking, okay, I got a better bike. And then I learned to be clipped in and fell, crashed into other people because I couldn't clip out soon enough. It was disaster, but I stuck with it. And I think I found out then that I have an athlete's brain because I kept getting injured. I fell out of a tree when I was preparing for that garden tour and I kept going. I mean, then I crashed my bike and broke a rib and punctured a lung, and I kept going, and I raced I mean, this is all happening over a period of years, but I didn't know that I had that athlete brain. I didn't know that I was competitive with myself. I played tennis, but I hated the way the other women were so nasty. So I stopped playing. Not to say that all tennis players are nasty, but these women were. And they acted like they were going to kill you at the net with their racket. And I just, that kind of thing wasn't my jam, but the cycling became big. The fact that I then were again going over years of me saying, no, 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 I'm not going to race. No, 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 I'm not going to do that. By the time I was 52, 53, I was racing. And I had never competed in anything before, and I was doing really well. And that went on for a while. And then, and my son was really proud that his mom was out there doing it. Meanwhile, he became the pro cyclist. And then I got to train with his teammates. They came to fit, they stayed with us, and they would take me out on pre-race rides. And it was remarkable, the skills of, pace lining and stuff like that. And I learned a ton. I became a spin instructor, then learned about heart rate training, learned about training zones. And I had a coach, my own coach. And then one thing led to another. I got another certification for Pilates because I felt like I was also a ballerina for a while, but I really sucked at that. I was really bad at that. But I felt like it was the antidote to running. Dance would be something other than constantly running. And I was very bad at it, but it was good for my brain. So all these things came together gradually, one certification after another. It was spinning, then it was Pilates, and then it was the personal training certification about 13 years ago. But in the meantime, I was doing group fitness classes. I called it Movement 360. So like Bill Nurge, it was about mobility. It was a lot about moving. It combined bar method. It combined yoga. I was teaching yoga classes and learning exercise physiology along the way, doing tons of research. I just recently threw away stacks and stacks and stacks of folders and files of things that I printed. I mean, those days it was printing everything. And gradually more certifications came along and more coaching, and rowing popped in there because one of my cycling friends lives on the Navesink River here and has a boat. And she said, come train with me in my basement. And I said, that sounds like torture. I would never want to sit on a machine going back and forth. I didn't like machines anyway, except for the treadmill and the Stairmaster. But I was like, that sounds really torturously boring. But I went anyway, and it wasn't fun. It was terrible. It was really boring, and her music was terrible. And sorry if she ever watches this, but sorry, Tess, I hated your music. But the thing is, she also introduced me to a guy who was a local water coach, a youth development coach, and also was doing indoor training sessions. And I was looking around at these other women who didn't look especially athletic, but they understood the mechanics of rowing. We were all in a line, and he was walking around talking to everybody. And then he'd get on his erg in the front and walk around and kind of look at our splits. And I didn't even know how to calculate a split. I didn't even know what that was. Numbers were flashing out of the monitor. I just kept looking at this other women, and he was standing next to me yelling at me. Because again, here I am, this cyclist person, this runner, this cyclist, this racing bike rider. Use your legs, use your legs. He kept yelling at me. I'm like, I'm using my effing legs. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you want me to do here? And he did not, even though he was a coach, he didn't have the sciencey way of explaining it. He kept saying legs, body, arms, legs, body, arms. But I was like, whoa, that's too many things to think about here. Until I got another coach, which he helped me find, and in a different place to learn to row. And this guy made so much sense. He explained 60% legs, 30% body, 10% arms. He explained the hip hinge, which I kind of knew, but then understanding how the legs and hips and upper body are connected, and the kinetic chain and all of that stuff made so much sense. So now we're going back like 10 years. So the bicycling and the rowing were overlapping. And then I found out about the You Can Row 2 rowing coaching certification, which I then got, and learned a ton, and joined the Concept 2 online group, and then the Concept 2 community. And then my friend who introduced me to rowing in the first place was in Sub 7, the cross team challenge group. Sub 7s, there's so many, but Sub 7, she wanted me to join her group. And then Sarah Furman, who's the UCAN person, suggested the Diamonds. So that's where I landed for the cross team challenge. And I mean, I'm not like some of the other people you've interviewed. They just row a lot, and they're putting in lots and lots of meters. I'm spending a lot more time on my rowing machine doing my classes, my Zoom classes, which I can do, by the way, for anyone all over the world. I do one-on-one, and I do group. And those sessions are as challenging as we make them, obviously, each individual, including me. And so sometimes we'll do a 2K or a 5K time trial. We prepare, we we build, we talk about it for a while. And I put in some great times. I end up being number one in my age group and women in the world. It always surprises me that I throw these numbers out. Wow, where are all the women? Where are all the women my age? But they may not be doing that particular thing or the workout of the day kind of thing. So I'm happy to see that I'm in there in the numbers and I'm doing well and I'm staying strong as a rower. And I think sometimes I might compete, but I'm not sure, really compete, but I don't have a lot of time, in addition to the local advocacy stuff that I told you about, which takes more
Yeah.
time than my actual job.
Yeah.
So that's a long answer to what my fitness is. And I do a lot of lifting also, which I know Bill does not do, but strength for women in particular, women my age, especially. I'm 71 and women are losing muscle and breaking bones more than men. But that coupled with mobility work, jumping, which a lot of women my age are afraid to jump. They feel uncomfortable doing it, or they're afraid they're going to hurt themselves. I mean, there's so much that is involved in communicating with the people that I talk to and train that is more psychology than exercise physiology, enabling women to use their bodies in ways that they never realized. And some women who have been athletes, but only did one thing and they never, like runners who run and that's all they do, or cyclists who ride and that's all they do. And when I get them training, I haven't trained rowers to row better, except people that I train in general who have become stronger rowers as they go along. But strength makes rowing better and rowing complements strength. That's a very long answer.
It's perfect, Polly. You've answered a number of my questions, but one thing I was wondering is, do you have any personal exercise goals in amongst helping people and doing coaching? Is there something that you would like to achieve?
I did two powerlifting competitions, but 5 years apart, one at the beginning of COVID and then they stopped doing it, and then one last year. And I won. And I know I'm really strong and I know that I'm good at jumping and I'm still pretty decent at running and I'm pretty fast on my bike. I can jump on my bike. A goal for me would be to be able to do really well in the next thing I do, whatever it may be. And I haven't decided yet, but probably the big bike ride is just a metric century for a charity ride that I'm on the committee for. And I don't want to come in last, because it's me. I'm on the committee and everybody thinks I'm such a good cyclist. But the interesting thing is as we get older, and I remember this happening when I was approaching 60, 62, 63, I was out there on these team rides in upstate New York with people. And I would show up and they'd be like, oh, Polly's here. And I was always pulling the train, doing whatever I was doing, hammering the hills. And even with my sister, we went to Girona with our husbands and she and I just slammed and did really well. And the guys were way behind. So I always had this like reputation that I had to uphold. And I wasn't even trying. It was just something I was pretty good at. And when you're good at a thing, you want to do it more and you do it well. Until on a team ride, and I had a coach, and instead of resting, when he said on my schedule, one day ride to the coffee shop, literally is what it said. And I didn't. I went and met up with these guys and did a team ride, hard team ride. And he was getting my numbers at a CSV file every week, and he could see everything that was happening, my power, all of it. And I hit a wall. It was overtraining. It was absolutely enlightening. I left that day. I went home and everyone was asking, what happened to you? I didn't know what had happened. But when my coach and I talked about it, he said, you weren't going to listen to me. You were not going to do this. Recovery is when you're getting strong. It's not when you're training. And I learned about overtraining and how important recovery is. And the same thing goes for strength training. So that was me learning about overtraining. And then the other thing that hit me was when I was pushing into my 60s, I was no longer the fastest person because there were also younger people who were entering this group. So I had to accept that ego thing about not always being the one who could just, chit chat along the hill and then zip up to the top of the hill and then go back down and meet the rest of the slower riders and go back up again. So as you get older, things get harder. And I was never like an elite athlete. So I didn't have a huge, psychological problem with it, which a lot of athletes do. They have a very difficult time moving from being, say, a pro athlete to not being able to do that thing that they are identified. Their identity is tied to that. My identity was not really tied to it, but it did hit me kind of, as an ego thing. I was performing really well and doing this stuff that I just started when I was about 50. And then 10 years later, all of a sudden it's getting really hard. And that was kind of annoying. But then I picked up a new thing. And then I realized, hey, I'm old. And now I'm in this really old age group for powerlifting and I can win this, which I did. So
So
that question is, I don't really have any particular goals, except that I want to keep doing what I do
yeah.
well.
So the two interesting things there. How did you know you were overtraining?
Because I couldn't complete that training ride. I was dead. I got up in the morning and I felt like I hated my bike and I had nightmares and stress. I mean, so many things happen. Your heart rate is either way too high or you can't get it up. I mean, there are physiological responses to overtraining, besides the fact that I didn't even want to ride my bike anymore. The alarm would go off and it was still dark. And I was like, I don't want to go train. I don't want to see those people. A lot of stuff happens to your body and your brain with overtraining. Are you familiar with that feeling?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Right? So I think once you love a thing and you start to do it more and more and more, you aren't even realizing that more is not better. And helping people to understand that recovery during a set, during a workout itself, during your week, during your month, even getting this information and processing it through the son who was the pro cyclist and periodization through a year of training is, they had their racing season when it's hard, hard, hard. And then after the racing season, there's a long recovery. It's yoga, it's hiking, it's walking, it's, all that stuff. And then gradually going into strength training and then getting into specificity back on the bike again, and then the racing season. So it's taking the year in blocks, and you can do the same thing and squish it down to a month. You can squish it down to a week. You can squish it down to a day. Getting rest and recovery is critical, not just when you're old, but for every athlete. It's so, so important.
And the other thing that you said when you were going through that was that you tried something else and that worked out well for you. So you had variety.
Yeah, I still love cycling. I love it. And now I have a much nicer relationship with rowing. And I really do love it because you get a lot of bang for your buck on the rowing machine that might take hours on the bike, in terms of, all the benefits of cycling and rowing are so related. In fact, the rowing machine is a bike chain. The Concept 2 is a bike chain. Do you know what the prototype looks like? The Concept 2?
You mean the original, yeah, like 30 years ago? Yeah, it's a bike wheel.
It's a bike wheel in Vermont, yes. So cycling and rowing complement one another. And, one is two legs, which is something you don't get, unilateral training on the rowing machine. It's two legs at a time. So a lot of my training involves unilateral training, jumping on one leg, Bulgarian split squats with jumps and weight, and explosive power, because I have a lot of injuries on one side of my body, and then the other side compensates. So I'm making sure that you're training the two sides separately so that when they work together, they work together better.
Yeah, and you've had quite a few injuries, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, at least they're interesting. Some of them are stupid, but I mean, they have a little backstory. So yeah, and then once you've had a hard crash, or you've fallen out of a tree or whatever, sometimes it takes a long time for the repercussions. Sometimes it's immediate, which it was because I broke the rib. That was one, and punctured my lung, which I didn't even know until after. And then years later, the hip on that side started responding because I hit that side of my body, and right now I'm dealing with physical therapy for my left shoulder. But then when you have something going on one side, the other side is connected. And it's called cross education. Actually, there's a thing where, do you know about that? It's so interesting that if you are absolutely incapacitated on one side is immobilized. If you train the other side of your body, it's talking to the immobilized side, so that if you get out of that cast, it's stronger than it would have been if you hadn't done anything. So the way the body works is truly miraculous. And, to me, that's the most exciting aspect of training myself and training other people, coaching women in particular who never knew this.
And talking about coaching, Polly, you've mentioned it quite a few times, and you are a coach. There are many different types of coaches. What coaching do you prefer to have?
Well, as I said, it's rowing and strength training together complement one another, and women, particularly older women, but also women through their perimenopause years. So we're talking, even if you become pregnant after age 35, it's considered a geriatric pregnancy. So women who are going through these periods of their lives as they move through hormonal changes that are going crazy, finding things that they can do that they didn't know they could do well, and then learning how to use their bodies, to me, it's the most besides training my one single Parkinson's client who's been amazing. He's the only man that I'm training right now, but it's strength and rowing. But I also want these women to utilize what they're doing on the rowing machine, which if you look at it on a horizontal plane, it's the same as jumping, right? If you're horizontal, it's also sitting and standing. It's so related to basic human movement, but then we don't get unilateral on the rowing machine. We don't get side to side. So we don't do rotation. So I do a lot of that in addition to strength training. And if women want to focus on powerlifting, we'll add that to their program. So for each client, it can be slightly different. I'm not rigid about it at all. I call it row plus strength in my group fitness classes, but strength has a lot of definitions. Strength is not just one thing, being strong. And other for the different thing between myself and Bill as a coach is that he says he doesn't use weights at all. And I do, but I saw his equipment on his videos. I use a lot of that, his power equipment too, for jumping, for lateral jumps, for springing those TRX like things that he's using. So none of it is off the table. And we do sandbags, we do throwing, we do jumping, we do ropes, we do a lot of stuff that I pick up from one discipline and another. Yoga, CrossFit, all of it can be utilized depending on the direction that the client wants to go or where I think that client should go. Actually, I do. I have two other men too. I forgot a pair of men who are training together. So,
Okay. And you're heavily involved in the local community as well. I saw the event with Arshay recently. There's a movie which I haven't seen yet, but trying to get hold of it. Tell us a little bit more about your community life, Polly.
Rowing factors into what you're talking about big time. Arshay Cooper wrote the memoir upon which the movie A Most Beautiful Thing was based. It came out in 2020, and when we saw it, it was COVID time. And there are images and footage in that film. It's based upon 20 years ago, this group of guys who were in a very poor community in Chicago became the first high school Black rowing team. And then 20 years later, the filmmaker, Mary Mazzio, she read his memoir, Arshay Cooper's memoir, found the men, and they got back together and they tell their story and how rowing impacted their lives as teenagers. And it didn't necessarily lead to college for all of them, but the lessons that they learned as a team over the years, then they got together again for the film and they became a team again. And included some police officers in the team. And I just thought the whole thing was so much like the way these guys grew up, so much like a certain neighborhood here in Asbury Park, where kids are so marginalized here and dealing with so many things. The beach is literally a 5-minute bike ride from my house. The whole city is 1.4 miles square. These kids have never seen the beach. They've never been to the beach. They don't know how to swim. They don't know what rowing is at all. So after I saw that film, I was determined, this is 2020, I was determined to figure out how to get rowing to these kids. And I had nothing. I got a big Zoom call with the entire school board, the grant writer and all the administration, and they had no clue what it was. One person, when I said rowing is great cross training for football, for the sports that these kids know, they know football, baseball, basketball. Rowing's great cross training for every sport. And one of the people on the call was the athletic director who said, "Oh yeah, CrossFit, yeah." And I was like, "No, that's not what I'm talking about." So they weren't getting it and nothing was happening. And I didn't have any ergs and I didn't have a place to do it. So I just kept calling the local rowing team coaches. And I know a lot of them because my kids rowed locally. My nephew's the president of the local rowing club in a town 10 miles away. So I know all these people. And I just thought there has to be a way. I know the Boys and Girls Club has a gym. And I know the coach of the Monmouth University women's rowing team. We're going to make this happen somehow. And then I got a call in the summer of 23 that I could have 10 used ergs from Drexel University, from the Monmouth University rowing coach. Where do you want them? I had no idea where to put them. So I called the Boys and Girls Club. I'm not kidding. This happened in one day. The truck showed up. I zoomed over there on my bike. And the guy who met me at the door said, "Well, I don't know where to put them." So we found a place, a closet. We took them apart and rolled them in. We took off the monitors because that would be a sensitive piece of equipment because I knew that stuff was going to get knocked around. And that was July of 23. And it wasn't until February of 24, last February, that the program actually kicked off. And I did show the film twice to the community. I got some local rowing team kids to come and talk about rowing, what it meant to them. But they were all white. So this is a sea of Black faces, kids who don't know what the heck they're talking about. But they watched the film and they saw a little bit of footage of local rowing races, of what a boat looks like in the water. And we had the ergs in the room so they saw what they were. And then the day that it started in the gym with the 10 ergs and me in the middle and a half circle of kids around me, it was utter chaos. Like must have been 35 kids ran in there, and they're jumping on the machine and sliding back and forth and grabbing the handle and throwing it around. And I did have some mom university students there helping me. We needed some bodies there besides me, and my husband was there. Little by little, with a lot of praise and a lot of encouragement and a lot of repeatedly saying, match my stroke, because I was in the front, and the chain moves in a straight line in and out of the chain guide, and just repeating. And I have 6 kids, so I know how to repeat things. And it just kept going and going and going every single Friday. We skipped a couple months in the summer, but I got 4 girls on the water last summer, and that was huge. Most of them don't know how to swim, which is a big deal. The Boys and Girls Club has a pool. So this year, it has become something that the kids know what to expect. It's not 35 kids anymore. It's 12. They take turns. Sometimes some drift in and out. It's not signups. Nobody pays for it. And we have a system. At the end, we do relays, and it's so fun, and high fives, and we bring snacks. So it is a community thing. It's a community service. But my goal, and Arshay agrees, is to get him back to talk to the high school kids, because that's really his group. He talked to middle school kids when he came to Asbury Park kindly for free with an honorarium 2 weeks ago. He agreed to come and did a dynamic job talking to these middle school kids, and a lot of community administrators and different people came from different organizations. And he wants to come back because the high school kids need to hear his message. And I just need to get a date nailed down for him to do that. And he thinks he can get us a boat. Maybe he can. Maybe I can get a boat. I have a woman who will coach. And if we can get this boat on our local water, it's not long enough. It's not a river, but these kids will find out what rowing really feels like in the water.
Yeah.
And I now believe that really all you have to do is ask. And I asked Arshay for 3 years to come, and he did. I was asking for ergs, and I got him. So if something is a passion and you believe in it, the message there is just do it. Follow your passion and see what happens.
Yeah, ask and show, because you in your Substack you written a few times about empowering others. So kind of imagine that you're working with people, whether you're coaching or it's the kids rowing, and you mentioned you're out front. Look at me, see what I do, and then do it yourselves and see where it takes you.
That's good. Yeah, I think so. I mean, with the kids, it is about personal empowerment, them learning to do something that they would never, ever have been introduced to. The kids they are being empowered. When they hear Arshay talking, that is super empowering. And empowering women to take charge in their lives. Being strong in your body, you could be facing all kinds of stress with your family, with your relationships, with anything. But if your body is functioning well, they say if you have like 15 problems in your life, until you have a health problem, then you have one problem. So a lot of women are dealing with the health thing, or they're dealing with the emotional thing, and once their bodies get stronger, they're able to deal with a whole lot of it way better. That empowerment component is really big. And I guess, as a parent, do you have kids
Yeah,
yourself?
through. Yeah,
Yes, you want to empower your children in one way in particular, which is the hardest, is to go away from you.
yeah,
So from the time you give birth to your kids, you're teaching them to not be nursing, breastfeeding anymore, to go to a cup, to tie their shoes, to go to the potty, to drive a car, to be able to, try sports and leave the house and climb mountains and all the things that other moms used to say, why are you letting him do that? Like, I couldn't stop it. If they want to do a thing, I'm going to make sure that I'll figure out a way to help them do that thing. And because I found out that I could do things I never knew I could do.
yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about meditation, coffee, and music a little bit, because we're getting to a reflective part of the conversation. And we were talking earlier about meditation. What does that do for you?
Well, as I said, I'm really not as regular at it as one should be to get the fullest benefits from it. But I think meditation can take different forms. My husband and I did a course on TM, Transcendental Meditation, and it was very interesting. As I mentioned to you, on the whiteboard when we had our first class, it said, trying is strictly prohibited. So it's not about an effort. It's not about following any specific steps. It's a mantra. It's 20 minutes twice a day. If you can do 20 minutes, even just once a day. I often skip days, but I think I can meditate on my bike. I think I can meditate if I'm alone on the rowing machine. That tick tock back and forth, the looking at your split, looking at your stroke rate. A lot of things can be meditative. And I also incorporate breath with everything that I do throughout the day. If I'm sitting at the computer too long and getting stressed, I have to get up and walk away. And I don't make a big deal of it. I do box breathing or 4-7-8 breathing. And it's all helpful. And I think a lot of it is a way of meditating. And there are apps, of course. There are certain ones that people swear by, and there is no wrong way to meditate. I don't think there's a best way to meditate. I think whatever way a person does it that's helpful to them and might even have a beneficial effect on hypertension, on digestion, on brain health. So yeah, so meditation's, it's there, but I don't make a big deal of it. And then the coffee and music thing. Yeah, there's that.
What took you to meditation? I'm curious to know why you would do it. Why start?
Yeah, I would never have known about it. One of my clients told me that she had been taking anti-anxiety medication for many, many, many years. And she said that doing 20 minutes a day of TM saved her life. And she told me more than once. I would meet her for a session and she just would drop it into the conversation. And I set it aside until finally I thought, this is a thing, just like a lot of other things I've never done. I don't know anything about it, and I want to know about it. If it's going to work, I'll let it work. It was just so interesting to me to see that this was, again, a worldwide, a global movement, along with David Lynch, who recently passed away. And there are millions of people around the world doing this specific TM meditation, and like firefighters who use it in the firehouse. They say that it's changed their lives, that they're off of their stress medication, that they've stopped smoking, that they're so healthy now in their relationships. So all of that was very illuminating to me, and I'm very glad that we did it. So when I do sit down and meditate and use my mantra, and even if I forget my mantra and bring it back and my mind wanders, it's still beneficial. So I'm not here to sales pitch, but it's cool. And if people are interested in checking it out, you can go online and see a lot of stuff about it.
Sure. And Polly, you're very busy. I mean, you're doing a lot of stuff. How do you fit everything in? What's the key to your time management?
I don't know. I don't manage it very well, I don't think. I mean, I don't unmanage it, but I don't think about it too much. If there's a thing that needs to be done. The nice thing is I'm not on the city council, but I'm an activist in my city. I'm an advocate for walking and biking. And I founded a group in 2015 called Asbury Park Complete Streets Coalition. And this is not a new thing. I didn't invent it. It's all over the world, all over the US. But the complete streets concepts are that streets should be utilized safely by everybody, especially the most vulnerable, which means anybody outside of a car is a vulnerable road user, and that streets are public space. They're not just for drivers. But in the US, our brains have been hijacked by the auto industry lie that the car is your identity and that cars give you freedom. And we don't have good mass transit here. So, trains are not the way that they are anywhere else in the world. So people drive and they're not happy behind the wheel usually, and they're aggressive, and they become more aggressive since COVID. And in our little town, it is a resort town. Besides being a fully functioning city all year, there are more and more speeders all the time. Crashes are occurring all the time. And it's disheartening, yet New Jersey is making strides in establishing a Vision Target Zero task force. And I'm on that committee at the state level. And I've just been asked to be a part of the new master plan for walking and biking in New Jersey, which is cool. I'm just this person. I'm not an urban planner. I'm just an advocate. I believe that we should be able to walk and bike safely. It's pretty basic, but that it's not just about walking and biking. It's about public space. It's about parks. It's about equity. Those bad words here in the US, equity. And again, with the kids, it's diversity and inclusion. All of those things are so important to livability in a city, to be able to live a healthy life for everybody. To me, it was never a big mission. It was just a thing that I saw a need for it. I just was like, we got to do this. And I got a few other people in the town who saw that I started with 2 other guys and another woman, and we didn't have a plan until we had a plan. And then we executed something in the city that was successful. And then it snowballed, so one thing after another. And then we became recognized at the state level, and people say even beyond. So it's pretty cool. And social media helps a lot too. Instagram and Facebook, as evil as they can be, we are now acknowledged all over the world. If people want to look up Asbury Park Complete Streets Coalition, they can find it on Instagram and Facebook too. I should talk about my business more because really,
Well,
I don't.
well, yeah. I mean, it's fascinating talking to you. Polly could go on for a long time, but perhaps just to finish, you could tell us where people can find you, because you've got a Substack, you've got your coaching, and probably something else as well. How do people find you?
Well, as I said, social media, Instagram and Facebook are 2 places that I do post and try to provide content like yesterday was actually the workout that I did with my Zoom people, just small, all little bits of the exercises and the description of what the workout was. So I try to provide content, and I want to offer more online coaching, meaning that people can purchase workouts, actual workouts, like a 15-minute or 30-minute workout that they can then do on their own and follow the video and figure out how to monetize that. I haven't done that yet, but my website is getupkeepmoving.com, and they can find me there for sure, and read. My blog is on my website, and it's also a Substack. It's the same content is on my thought box on my website and the Substack. And I just want it to be meaningful and helpful and useful for people, for men and women, and on a subject that might resonate. Could be about kids. It could be about fat burning, which we were talking about earlier, about calories. Where does the fat go when it's going away out of your body? And we now know the answer to that.
It's your breath.
It's your breath. It's not your pee, and it's not your sweat. Yeah. So all of these things I hope will, lead people to becoming a little bit more enlightened and engaged in their own lives and their own bodies. And then hire me as a coach, because I really should be promoting that more than all this other stuff that I do for free. But it's all rewarding. It's all a part of the same picture of enabling people to do what they do healthily, to
Yeah.
live well.
Empowering others.
I guess that makes me sound like a really nice person. Hearing you say it, maybe
I'm sure you are, Polly. Well, it's certainly very inspirational. Thank you very much for talking to me, and I look forward to talking again.
thank you so much for including me in your podcast.
Great pleasure. Great pleasure.
Bye.